Okay, let's take a look at the table plant pot. So this is a nice straightforward one. You guys know the drill by now. We'll call this terracotta. Plug it in. You can also drag the redshift material, so the shading group, onto the geometry in the viewport. For some reason mine is not working right now, so there seems to be a bit of a bug, so that's the reason I've been selecting it from here. Usually I would be sort of dragging and dropping. So let's apply that material, jump back inside. Okay, so that's what we got so far. And we'll jump into the terracotta folder. So this is another actually this is textures.com. Apply that albedo. That's already looking pretty good. I'm just going to check my UVs in this. So we'll drop down a UV quick shade to see what our UVs are looking like. Okay, so they're looking okay. A little bit stretched though. So I think what I'll do is, I don't think I took the time to UV this asset. There's a lot of assets in the scene where I choose to not UV because the patterns are very tileable, and that means I can just use an RS triplanar node. So we stick that in. Let's see what he looks like now. Fire that off. I'm going to turn this off a second. Okay, that's a little bit weird. Looks like it's not doing too much there, so I'm just going to check we got the right one on. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, let's increase. Well, actually, we'll just duplicate these two. We'll put in our roughness map. Plug that in. Reflection roughness. And looks like it's pretty strong there. So we will take a look at our roughness map. I'm also going to take a look at what it looks like from here as well, because that's looking pretty good. So we'll plug this in. Yeah, I think that's looking nice. Just testing these out. Yeah, that's looking cool. I'd like to add a little bit of contrast here. So we'll drop down RS color correct. Snip those lines a second with Y. So hold Y down. Plug this in. Refresh the render. Instead of this, we'll use an RS change range. Play around with the min and max. Just like that. Just to add a little bit of contrast in there. And then we could also lift up those black values by just a touch. So we have this. And I think there is actually something broken here, because this does not seem to be... Ah, there you go. It's because we've not plugged it in. There you go. That's looking a little bit better. We're starting to get some nicer details standing out there. That looks kind of cool. Change the BRDF to GGX. You can see it. You can actually see it's pretty obvious, the difference. Just instantly more real using GGX BRDF. We definitely do with adding some dirt. So we'll use an RS curvature node. Let's see what this gives us. We'll go with something like 64 samples and let's try concave. We'll drop this right down. Okay, not quite what I expected there. There you go, getting something a little bit better now. That's looking alright. Let's multiply in like a grunge texture to break up these really uniform parts. So we'll jump into textures, grunge. The second one, it's like my sort of go-to grunge texture. And we will multiply this in. So RS multiply. And just make sure you're using the Redshift versions, as the standard Houdini mantra ones won't work. Okay, so we need even more contrast. So we'll drop down RS change range. Increase the contrast there, so we get something that looks kind of cool. So that's looking pretty interesting. I think maybe we could, let's try lowering this. That is not looking bad at all. That looks kind of cool. Just playing around with the curvature here. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Another RS material, which is our dirt. You could copy this over actually from any of the other ones we've done. So chair, and we had a dirt material in here somewhere. So dust. Dirt just saves a little bit more time. There you go. Delete that one. Paste this in. We will throw down a material blender. This goes into layer 1. This is the mask. And this is our base color. Like so. And we can drop down RS change range right at the end here, just to push up those white values. So remember, wherever there's white in this mask coming from here, that's where our dirt's going to be. So we just pump those white values up. Okay, that's looking kind of cool. Maybe like half of that. That's not looking bad. I think we could refine this even more. I'm not too happy with the result. About 2.5 by 0.5. See what that looks like. 4 by 4. Just sort of tiling this over to see what kind of different results I can get, really. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, nice. Yep, it's not looking bad at all. Let's add a dust layer as well. So we'll jump out. I think we'll pinch the one from the table wood. So we grab this and paste it in. Plug this into layer 2. Use the same mask. See what that looks like. So it's looking way too strong, so we'll drop that down. 0.3. Maybe like 0.2, and just drop that down as well. Also, it's looking very weak, so we'll drop down a RS color correct, restart the render, increase the saturation by 10%, 20%. There you go, that's looking pretty cool. I think we can just increasing the contrast there just a touch. We start to get these really nice reflections here. Just a nice bit of breakup. We can also try adding in a normal map as well. I think that's going to really help. So RS normal map. So copy and paste. So copy the file name, paste them in, browse to that normal map. I think that's adding a little bit of detail there, which is cool. Snapshot. Bypass it. Yeah, not bad. And we need to make sure we're tiling this by the same amount. So this is 1 by 1. Yep. It's looking cool. Could even go as far as adding maybe some tiny like cracks in here or something. So we could add in a displacement map. So depending on sort of what condition this plant pot has been in, you can add some sort of surface cracks. So we'll drop down an RS texture. I use like a concrete crack texture for this, I think. So concrete megascans. Maybe something like this. Show you what this texture looks like in a moment. So we'll plug this into an RS displacement map. Just going to drop that straight down, as I know the scale will be far too strong. Also make sure that you have displacement enabled on your ROP. So you'd have to jump in and just make sure it's enabled here. So we get this happening. And you also have to go to the Redshift tab, enable tessellation. So you've got to make sure that we subdivide this at render time. And just be careful the amount you're actually adding to this, because this will increase render time. So just bear that in mind. We can drop this down to 0.01. I think that adds a nice bit of detail. We could also tile it. So those details are just a little bit smaller. We could double the intensity. That's looking kind of cool. Maybe like heart, maybe. Yeah, I think that looks kind of cool. That's really adding some nice detail there. I think that looks nice. You could even add maybe in some extra dirt sort of at the bottom where this has come in contact with the floor. So we've already got our dirt layer here. We got the mask for the dirt here. Depending on our UVs, we could create an RS ramp. And let's view that ramp, see what it looks like. I think vertical is right, it should be right. Let's change this to horizontal. See what we get there. And yeah, we could sort of leave this to, I don't know, somewhere around there. And this does depend on your UVs. So if you don't have any UVs or they're sort of all over the place, this technique might not work, as the ramp is relying on your UVs. Let's take this texture map and we'll multiply this in to get some breakup in that very solid pattern we've got there. Drop down an RS change range, restart the render, and we're going to increase the contrast of this texture map here so we get even more breakup. So increase the contrast like so. Even push those white values up just a little bit there. We could re-add in some of this map, so RS add, like that back in, and just drop this even further down so we're getting it sort of more at the bottom there. And I guess you could keep layering that. I think I'll take that out, it's not working too well. So we can add this in with what we currently have, which is there. Replug it back in. We should be getting a little bit more dirt down at the bottom now. Let's boost up that mask coming from here. So we're already happy with the amount of dirt coming from this mask, which is why I don't add the RS change range here. We need to pump up just the mask we made for down here, so this is why I add it in this position. So we'll change that to like 10. It's going to be way too much, but change that to 2, maybe 3. The dirt could be maybe just a little bit, looks a bit red. So just going to bump this up just a little bit. Yeah, maybe something around that color. Yeah, it's looking cool. It looks a little bit too patchy. It'd be nicer to have just going to see what this looks like by adding in noise with the ramp. Might actually, there you go. So that's actually a really neat way of sort of adding some breakup there. Just increase that frequency, just really lift it up. That's really helpful. It's super helpful actually. Let's lift it up to around there. That's really nice. And let's view from here. Actually discovering things as I'm messing around with these nodes even more. which is really cool. Drop this back down to about 2 a sec, and drop him back down. Let's put this between 0 and 1, I think. Let's check that out. It's looking cool. Try mess around with the noise a little bit more. Increase the frequency. It's giving some really nice results. Just sort of playing around with it until I get something that looks decent, really. Could try that. We'll see what that looks like. I think it may be too much of a solid patch, but it's worth giving it a go. Let's pump that up to 3. See where we stand. Maybe 6. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. Yeah, it looks nice. Those cracks are really helping as well. They look really cool. We could be a touch too much on the glossiness, but I think it's picking up some really cool highlights. You'd actually even add in this texture map here of the grunge. You could even mix this in, multiply it in with the texture roughness, the terracotta roughness map, to get even more sort of breakup, which would look really cool. But I'll leave that down to you guys to do. But I think overall that's looking pretty cool. I'm just going to move that flower into place now. So we'll turn that table flower back on. Just going to zoom out and we'll move him into place. So I'll hit enter on the keyboard. I'll move the pivot to the center of the object and then I'll just move it. Just make sure it's not penetrating. Lift this over. I think we'll put it there. I think at that edge. Feels like it's sort of leaning, which is nice. So let's check out what we've accomplished here. Yeah, I think that's looking really cool. I think we can just turn these cracks down just a little bit. They're just standing out that little bit too much for me. It becomes more apparent when you change the angle of the camera. You kind of don't want the plant pot to look like it's sort of cracking so much to the point where it'd fall apart. But I think that's looking pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's looking nice. So I've turned everything on that we've look dev'd so far, and I think it's looking pretty good. This was like a 59-second render, which is actually kind of slow, but we are using quite large texture maps, and our surfaces are being subdivided. But I'm sure we can get this down by adjusting the render settings. But I'm sort of zooming in. I'm seeing, you know, is this flower looking right? Is the plant pot looking right? So on, how is the tablecloth looking from a distance? I'm thinking, yeah, that's looking cool. How's that table leg looking? Spotted a problem here. So the cloth is sort of intersecting with the chair, so that's not good. So that means, I guess, we could either rotate the table round to hide the problem, which I would probably do, as that saves me time, or I'd sort of re-simulate using the metal of the chair and also the wood parts of the chair as colliders. So that's another way. But I think overall this is looking pretty good. I'll come into the concept and just take a look, and I'll say, yeah, this plant pot's looking cool. You know, maybe it could be a little bit more sort of ready and more like sort of, yeah, more saturated. But then I'm thinking, you know, we've only got our sky dome on here. So once we get sunlight in here and we're getting lots of bounce light, this is going to become a lot more saturated. We also may have to go in and just turn down the saturation on these chair legs just to make them feel a little bit more realistic. I think the ground's looking quite cool. I think that's looking nice. I think overall that's a good job done. So what we can do now is apply the plant pot material to the rest of the plant pots in the scene. So we'll just grab that there, space G to select it in the viewport. We'll copy that. I think what I'll do as well is maybe disable displacement on this plant pot, and also the tessellation, because it's so far away we're not going to see it. Turn this on, you know, if you're sort of going close up to the asset, that makes sense. I'm going to type in plant pots, and we're just going to turn all of them on. So we've got them there. Let's grab the material from here, and we'll just apply it to all of these plant pots on the floor. And hopefully that should look good out of the box. So I'll take a snapshot, just wait for this render. Let's actually stop it, jump into the ROP net on the ROP, and I'm just going to turn this down to something like 64, just so it's a little bit quicker. And these aren't my final render settings. I just put this up to 512 just to clear up the noise. I'd usually go in towards the end, which I'll show you guys, and I'll start tweaking the sampling overrides for a faster render. So just bear in mind that these plant pots are using the same shader as here. And I think they're actually looking pretty good. We've got a bit of a line here, so that might need fixing. We could probably turn down the displacement. I think it's a touch too strong. So let's do that. And this is sort of how I go through my scene. I add all the elements together, and I say, well, you know, this looked good when we were close up, but you know, there's maybe a few too many cracks, they're too deep, etc. And not looking very good. So we'll go back in, turn down the displacement, maybe even half that. Take a snapshot, compare the difference. Sort of waiting for this area, that's looking a little bit better. Select all of them, and under the tessellation let's turn the tessellation down to 2 for all of them. Should make a slightly faster render. But I think overall they're looking pretty good. They've got a nice feel to them, we're getting some nice reflection coming off there. Also off here as well, yeah, it's looking pretty decent. I'm just going to jump back in. I'm sort of noticing that, you know, we're getting this sort of stretching issue here. So we're triplanaring. I'm just making sure that's triplanar. So we have to do the same here. So that should be applied after the normal map. This should also be applied here as well. So we don't have UVs for these plant pots. So it's very important that we make sure we're adding that triplanar. Same goes for here. And this is our displacement. We could also triplanar that as well. and just see how that looks. And hopefully it should fix some of those issues we're getting here. Looks like it wasn't showing up on the plant pot, so there you go. Let's kind of fix that stretching issue now. Yeah, it's a nice fix. And it's also gotten rid of these issues. So like I said, just make sure that you're using a triplanar node if you don't have proper UVs sorted for your models. See, I really like it when we start to get nice reflections like this. We can clearly see the sort of difference in roughnesses. You know, we're getting sort of rougher parts and nice shinier parts. Yeah, that's looking cool. I'm happy with that.